Text can provide insight into human nature, specifically how concepts of fear and conflict can provoke primitive instinct. Arthur Miller's The Crucible and Ang Lee's Life of Pi provide insight into the effect of fear and conflict on primitive human behaviour. The film Life of Pi is an allegorical fiction that illustrates the struggle for human survival and how it parallels animal behaviour. The film's origins come from a novel written during a time in Indian history called The Emergency, in which there was an immediate threat to health, life and property, which led individuals to fend for themselves. In the film, Hussein or Pi is stranded on a lifeboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. After the brutal murder of the zebra and the orangutan by the hyena, Pi's instinctual animal behaviour is sparked. This is marked by the emergence of a vicious Bengal tiger named Richard Parker. Richard Parker kills the hyena in a brutal confrontation. The switch between point-of-view camera angles of what Pi is seeing and close-up shots of Pi's facial expressions are used to convey to the audience the grief and emotion that Pi feels. However, this grief and emotion quickly changes to rage, and a cutaway shot introduces the emergence of Richard Parker from beneath Pi. The strategic camera angles and editing techniques used in this scene are intended to convey to the audience that there is a connection between Richard Parker and Pi. Specifically how the height of Pi's rage is not coincidentally staged with the emergence of Richard Parker, but rather Richard Parker is intended to be an anthropomorphic representation of Pi's rage and animal instinct. The conflict between each animal is intended to parallel the human behaviour in modern societies, and the long-lasting effects of the emergency. The play The Crucible illustrates the corruption and hysteria within the theocratic society of the 17th century, in which individuals sacrificed integrity and the lives of others in fear of punishment. This is seen in an interaction between John Proctor and Reverend Hale, in which Proctor says, "I never knew until tonight the world had gone daft with this nonsense." He later says, "There are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. Have you ever thought of that?" In this interaction between John Proctor and Reverend Hale, two different views of the trial are clear. Proctor is sceptical of the things being said, and claims the world has gone daft. The hyperbole in this statement exemplifies the dramatic hysteria in Salem that blinds common sense. Furthermore, the rhetorical questioning of Hale's judgment in "There are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. Have you ever thought of that?" is intended to question the audience on how we trust what is told to us in court, and provoke the audience to reflect on the communist hysteria of the time. The fear of punishment in Salem provides insight into the culture of the time, specifically what is valued and how it has not changed in 20th century America. As a theocratic society of the 17th century, enduring medieval approaches to court are still in place. This pressures individuals to life their life. Ultimately, this demonstrates to the audience the lack of reliability in court trials and political parties. The story Life of Pi is literal and physical in nature, but is an allegory for internal conflict heavily linked to fear and primitive instinct. In the final character monologue scene, Pi reflects on his conflict with Richard Parker and recognises the struggle that brought them together. As a series of flashbacks with point-of-view angles and close-ups of Pi's face reveal the guilt and grief that Pi has repressed. Pi acknowledges the connection between him and Richard Parker in "I have to believe there is more in his eyes than my own reflection staring back at me. I know it. I felt it." The guilt that Pi feels and the internal conflict between him and his instinct is intended to align with the guilt that we feel for fighting for our own agenda and the things and the people that we must sacrifice in order to do so. The conflict in The Crucible is interpersonal, as a result of the hysteria and the fight for everyone's own agenda. This is intended to reflect the capitalist money-made America of the 20th century, in which we all fight for our piece of the pie. Mrs. Putnam says in a confrontation with John Proctor and Rebecca Nurse, "There are wheels within wheels in this village, and fires within fires." This means that there are secrets and agendas at work, and conspiracies and plots amongst townfolk. Each motive and struggle to survive drives further accusations in court, and extenuates the chaos in the town. Similarly, at the time of the play's publishing, Senator McCarthy, an anti-communist politician, was using communist hysteria to accuse his rivals and increase political power. Hence, Arthur Miller is trying to convey his motives and manipulation to give the audience insight into the political environment of the 1950s. In sum, Ang Lee and Arthur Miller use fear and conflict to convey the nature of primitive human behaviour, and to give insight into contemporary examples of primitive human behaviour and highlight issues in current societies.